Considered to be the first genocide of the 20th century, the Ottoman Turkish government began a systematic campaign of arrests, deportation, and annihilation against Armenians that by 1923 had claimed the lives of an estimated 1.5 million people. The issue is dear to the heart of Serj Tankian, lead singer for the acclaimed rock band System of a Down and co-host of the Axis of Justice radio network, which airs each month on KPFK. Serj and his co-host Tom Morello spoke recently with Representative Adam Schiff at the studios of KPFK. Today we're proud to air this interview on Uprising.
On January 30th, 2007, Congressman Adam Schiff introduced House Resolution 106, the Armenian Genocide Resolution, to the U.S. House of Representatives. The resolution calls upon the U.S. President to ensure that the foreign policy of the United States reflects appropriate understanding and sensitivity concerning issues related to human rights, ethnic cleansing, and genocide documented in the United States record relating to the Armenian Genocide. Welcome, Congressman.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Adam Schiff is a Democratic member of the United States House of Representatives. He was initially elected to Congress in 2001 and represents California's 29th Congressional District, which includes Alhambra, San Gabriel, Burbank, Glendale, South Pasadena, Temple City, Monterey Park, and Pasadena. So let's start at the beginning. How did you become the leading voice in the U.S. Congress for recognizing the Armenian Genocide?
I would say it began in a lot of living rooms in my district, sitting down with people who had firsthand experience of the genocide, people who survived it, people who were put on forced marches, who were separated from their siblings, who never saw their parents again, or who would wake up in the morning and have lost their mother in the evening, dying of cold and starvation, who would see their father taken out and shot. When you sit down and you hear these stories, it's quite different than reading statistics about what happened in 1915. It takes on a very personal meaning. And, of course, these stories that were told to me by my constituents had a very familiar ring to it. Being Jewish, talking to Holocaust survivors, it's a very familiar and horribly tragic story that is told over and over again. In the first part of the last century against the Armenians, later against the Jews, Cambodians, Rwandans. We see it going on in Darfur today. It is a problem that is as old as mankind. And I think these first-hand experiences really are what caused me to have a personal commitment on this issue.
And what is the reason that the United States, what is the difficulty in getting the United States to recognize the Armenian genocide?
Well, that's a great question because among historians there's no debate whatsoever. And the challenge has been that unlike other genocides, in this case you have a powerful government that is devoting all of its lobbying effort and millions of dollars to prevent recognition by the United States, by the international community, and that, of course, is the Republic of Turkey. This was a genocide that was committed by the Ottoman Empire that tried to annihilate the Armenian people. It is obviously a very dark chapter in Turkey's Ottoman past and one they're determined to rewrite or ignore. And the force of our alliance, the force of their lobbying, has succeeded from time to time in causing the United States to back off its commitment to speak plainly about genocide. But this has caused, I think, enormous problems not only in terms of justice for the victims of the genocide, and Elie Wiesel, I think, said better than anyone, denial of genocide is the final chapter of genocide. It's the final act of genocide. And in this sense, the Armenian genocide goes on because the denial goes on. But it also has a very contemporary practical impact, and that is how can we persuade China and Russia to condemn the genocide going on in Darfur when doing so would mean taking issue with their allies if we're unwilling to recognize a genocide because it would offend our ally. It has undermined our position in dealing with contemporary problems as well.
What is the significance of the word genocide in terms of Turkey's responsibility for its crimes? This whole fight is over a single word, and sometimes you think about it and you're like, it's one word. What is the significance of that word? I mean, if there were soldiers sent throughout the Ottoman Empire to commit those, horrible acts of killing and maiming and deporting and whatnot, then why would the responsibility change whether we use the word genocide or not? I think it's important to explain this to people.
It's a great question, and it matters because, and no one has said this better than the president, words matter. The fight has been so vociferous over it because it does matter, not only what we call it, but by how we label what took place, what our understanding is of our history, of the history of the world. Was this, as the Turks claim, killings that took place under cloud of a war conflict? Was this somehow justified or excused by the fact that it was during wartime, and were the Armenian populations acting against the Ottoman Empire? Were they somehow in concert with the enemy? It matters a great deal that we debunk that rewriting of history, because that simply wasn't the fact. The fact is that a people were singled out because of who they were, to be slaughtered, to be annihilated. It was an example that Hitler would later point to in justification of the Holocaust, saying, who remembers, after all, the Armenians? And what more poignant proof could you have than the importance of recognizing what's happened, calling attention to what's happened, if we're ever to try to stop this scourge from being visited upon us in the future?
So just to make it clear that there's no historical debate outside of Turkey about the fact that the genocide occurred and is recognized internationally, with the exception of the United States? Is that correct?
Well, not exactly. There is no historic debate. That part is perfectly correct. Among historians the world over, outside of Turkey, there's no debate. Among historians in the United States, there's no debate. The International Association of Genocide Scholars, clearly on record, no debate. Where there is, a debate is whether we should speak plainly about this history.
Right.
And now there are other countries that have taken a much greater leadership role in Europe that have spoken openly. Their governments are on record, recognized the Armenian genocide. Our own government has done it in the past. Ronald Reagan, when confronted with this moral issue, notwithstanding that we were in the middle of a Cold War and Turkey was just as valuable an ally then, had the courage and conviction to say, this was a genocide, and we need our leadership to do the same thing today.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Describe President Obama's position on the recognition of the Armenian genocide.
Well, this is a president who came to office with the strongest record on the Armenian genocide of any president in our lifetime, who has spoken very openly about the Armenian genocide as a senator, who condemned the Bush administration for mincing words and not being willing to call this exactly what it was. When, for example, the Bush administration fired Ambassador John Evans, who was the U.S. ambassador to Armenia, because Ambassador Evans had the temerity to speak openly about the Armenian genocide. It cost him his job. It was a courageous act of a statesman of ours, and they fired him. Then Senator Obama was devastatingly critical of the Bush administration. I think more than any other past president, he recognizes how our unwillingness to confront this is inhibiting our ability to speak out on Darfur and to prevent these tragedies from happening in the future.
I'm Tom Morello.
I'm Serj Tankian.
We're speaking with Congressman Adam Schiff, the author of House Resolution 252 to recognize the Armenian genocide. In Congress, is it openly cynical, since it's a matter of the historic record that this is a genocide, and due to the strategic importance of Turkey, the lobbying on behalf of the Turkish government against recognition of the genocide, is it like openly cynical? I mean, this speaks to a lot of people's distrust of their representatives. When we can speak very plainly about it here, but if you're face to face with a congressman who's not willing to sign on to the resolution, how do you discuss it as grown people?
You can discuss it as grown people. It's not completely a cynical exercise.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are people who oppose this for the basest of reasons, oppose recognition for very base reasons. Most of the pushback I get when I lobby my colleagues on this issue is they'll say, hey, listen, I'm not denying there was a genocide. Plainly, there was a genocide. But Turkey is such an important ally. This just isn't the right time. And now I've been at this for over a decade. In my decade, it has never been the right time.
Right.
And there are survivors who, are barely still with us. They're around 100 years old. And it hasn't been the right time very often in their lifetime either. So if after, 90 some odd years it's not the right time, when will it be? And I've just seen the never-ending litany of reasons why this is not the right time. When we brought the resolution up a year and a half ago, and it passed out of committee, we were poised to bring it up on the floor, the clamor from the Bush administration then, and 8 former secretaries of state weighed in against it, and the president was calling members of the committee at their homes to urge them to vote against it, was, well, we can't do this because if we do this, Turkey is threatening they're going to go into Iraq and go after the Kurds, and we don't want them to do that. So the resolution is not taken up.
Which they did anyway.
They did it anyway.
Yeah.
They did it anyway.